welcome to Hail to the podcast, brought to you by M&BR Review. Oh man, this is the day after Thanksgiving. We're getting through it. I'm Trevor McCue, senior editor at M&BR Review, joined of course by the man, the publisher himself, Josh Henschke. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you, and how was your Thanksgiving?
I'm good. Turkey hangover, right?
Yeah.
All the food stuff. So I typically don't like going out on Friday, traffic and stuff, but we had some errands to run, so it was a little chaotic. But obviously we're here to talk about one thing and one thing only. That's tomorrow, Michigan, Ohio State, number 2 versus number 3. Big Ten East on the line, college football playoff berth on the line, potentially the Heisman Trophy on the line, right? We don't get a lot of these big games in this rivalry. I mean, we get more top 5 matchups than any other rivalry, but I mean, everything on the line here. So we're going to go through a few things today. Obviously, there's the elephant in the room, which is the health of the roster. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about what we think Michigan's got to do to win this game in Columbus for the first time since 2000. And then we're obviously going to take any questions or answers you guys want to throw our way. We want this to be an interactive show. So if you're joining us on YouTube, throw up some comments and we'll be sure to respond to what we can. Now, a lot of what we're going to cover today, we've been talking about all week at michigan.rivals.com. If you haven't been there, you've been missing out. But good news, this is the time to join. We are running our best promo right now for the year, $22 for your first year when you sign up at michigan.rivals.com. Just use promo code RIVALS22. Otherwise, if you're following myself at Trevor McCue on Twitter or at Josh Henschke on Twitter, we've been tweeting it out. There's a link that takes you directly to it and automatically plugs in the promo. So we'd love to have you join, access to our intel, and join us in our community on the Den. Lots of back and forth, good Michigan talk on there. So housekeeping out of the way, Josh, like I said, elephant in the room, man, health of the Michigan roster. I'll just let you have the floor, buddy. Take away.
Yeah. So I guess the big question that still kind of remains is, what are these guys going to be at in terms of percentages wise? And I don't know. I mean, I don't think we'll ever really truly know where these guys are at, percentage wise. But, I was told that everyone traveled today. I mean, there was a picture that sent out with AJ Henning on the boarding the plane. So that's good. We've been hearing consistently positive things about, most of these guys that have been injured. There's just an unfortunate laundry list of guys that are on the list, but I know everyone wants to know about, one guy in particular, and maybe, you can throw Donovan Edwards in there too, but everyone wants to know about Blake Corum. And as far as I know, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's for sure playing tomorrow, but I mean, things are trending in a really good direction, which, he should be able to see the field. But again, what percentage is he going to be at? Is he going to be limited? I don't know that for sure, but he was participating in practice all week. Participating in walkthroughs, took some, I guess, what I was told, live type reps. I don't know what that means, live type. But, the fact that he was out there, participating in whatever capacity the coaching staff wanted him to participate in is obviously a good sign. Probably will wear a knee brace if he plays on Saturday. But, yeah, I mean, it all looks really good, it trending in the right direction in terms of Corum. And if it doesn't work out tomorrow, then I would be surprised. But, at the same time, I mean, things have been interesting. I thought that Luke Schoonmaker was going to play last week. I was told that he was good to go, but didn't see the field. I was told Mike Morris was trending in the right direction. He didn't see the field either. So, things can happen, but again, everything that we've been told, everything that's been trending in the right direction, if he did not see the field, and again, it's Ohio State, so the stakes are a little bit higher. So I think these guys are going to push a little bit harder to see the field. And, so, things are trending in the right direction. The good news might be good news. The fact that they traveled with the team is a really, really good sign. If not just for mind game purposes, but, considering that what we've been told all week, the fact that he ended up making the trip is a good thing. So, Donovan Edwards, again, I've been told, he's been the one constant all week where I've been told, oh, yeah, he's going to play. I tend to believe what people tell me. He was probably more of a participant in practice this week than Corum was. So I tend to believe that he's going to play. Again, percentage wise, I don't know, and I'm not even going to put a percentage on it because you don't really know.
Well, and I don't think they do.
Yeah,
right? Until they hit warm up Saturday, and maybe even live action. Right, I said that with Corum, that first cut, that first time getting tackled on the ground. That might be where we really know, okay, what's going to be the limit of these guys that do get on the field, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it all changes when the bullets are live because, these guys aren't going to be beating the crap out of each other in practice this week. Right. I mean, there's going to be some serious practicing, but you're not going to risk, further injury with these guys heading into the game and try to get them as rest as much as possible. So, it sure sounds like Michigan's going to get a bunch of guys back this week. Luke Schoonmaker, Mike Morris, kind of on the fence. I'm not really sure what to say about Mike Morris. I know he'll travel, but I think there's going to be a lot more guys returning than guys sitting out this week. So, good news because, Michigan's going to need a full roster here tomorrow.
Well, I think it's important to note, too, obviously the Corum injury is new, right? That occurred in the Illinois game. And then Junior Colson as well, I believe we saw step off, and we've been hearing a little bit about this week. A lot of these guys have been dealing with stuff and have been held out of games, almost blatantly told to be ready for Ohio State, right? So this was kind of part of the plan, right? I agree with you. I was surprised with Schoonmaker. He was dressed and out there. And, you hear it, oh, these guys could have played if they were needed. It's like, man, during that Illinois game, right? Like, do you mean like Schoonmaker was going to run out in the fourth quarter for the first time? Like, what does that even mean? That game was close, right? So the Mike Morris one, I think, is interesting, though. We all know how important Blake Corum is. And I think Donovan Edwards, for matchup purposes and as a receiver, might be equally as important, right, as Corum. But the pass rush last year was so important in that victory for Michigan and Ohio State, for Michigan over Ohio State, because they're driving down the field, right? Ohio State packed up numbers between the 20s last year. But obvious passing situations, third down, Hutchin Ojabo went after and got C.J. Stroud. So if Mike Morris doesn't go, we saw last week kind of what the pass rush looked like without Mike Morris. So I know we'll get into some more what-if situations, but I'm going to lead with that one real quick. Offensively, we're probably going to spend some more time. But on the defensive side of the ball, if there's no Mike Morris, what's going to happen to Michigan's game plan in terms of the pass rush on C.J. Stroud?
I don't think it really changes drastically. I mean, they'll still want to get to the quarterback, obviously, but they'll just be a little light. They'll be missing their best pass rusher. You could see more of a, Taylor Upshaw type of thing. I know Harbaugh was really happy with how he played last week. Yabioki, Braden McGregor. There's just a bunch of guys that they can at least trot out there. I don't think they're going to be, as productive as Mike Morris could be. But yeah, that's an interesting question. You can kind of make the argument that Mike Morris might be the most important player in terms of availability, even more so than Corum. I mean, they're both kind of very, very important to their respective sides of the ball. Just I think from an offensive standpoint, I'd probably give the nod to Corum just because you saw what happened when he went out of the game last week. So yeah, I mean that's a big question mark. What happens to Michigan's defensive line if Mike Morris can't go, or Mike Morris is hampered enough to not be effective? That's we'll see. And granted, Ohio State has some injuries on their offensive line too, and on offense. So, it's not like Michigan is completely going into this thing with the, the steep sledding, but yeah, I mean, there's no question that they're going to have to be more effective this week than they were last week, and you're facing a better team. So, yes, the pass rush wasn't effective last week, but they got the job done. So, you can also go back to that and say, hey, they really didn't after Chase Brown's long touchdown run, they didn't really do much, and they made stops when they needed to. Um, the onus is going to be on the defensive backs, the back half of the field. Probably more than the pass rushers anyway. But again, when you have effective pass rushers that can kind of disrupt what CJ Stroud wants to do, it'll hurry him up a little bit, and won't give him time to let plays develop because those receivers are really, really good. So there's a lot goes in. There's a lot that goes into that, and I think Mike Morris is a key part to it. I think Michigan can manage without him, but as I've been saying about Blake Corum too, having Mike Morris at any kind of percentage is better than the alternative of not having him at all.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've seen Michigan rotate guys and build depth at that position all year. And we've seen moments where, like you said, Upshaw's really come along in the back half of the season and kind of the more secondary role he's been plugged into. Derek Moore's a freshman. We've seen flashes. Braden McGregor, same thing. We've seen flashes. And then obviously Yabioki really surprised us during the first part of the year, right?
Yeah. Yep.
What we've noticed is when Morris isn't out there, all of those guys go down a level, right? Just because of the attention that Mike Morris commands. So even if it's not him literally making the play, I think just him being out there, like you said, even at a limited percent, probably allows the other guys to eat a little bit more. In that matchup department, you kind of started to touch on it. And I think it's an interesting conversation with the secondary versus the receivers. Because I think I could make a very simplified argument on paper that two of Ohio State's top receivers last year are playing on Sundays. Those were top 10, top 15 picks, right? The other top receiver in that game, Jackson Smith and Nick Joe, isn't playing right at this point. I mean, we'd be shocked if he steps out there, and even if he does, he hasn't played in a while.
Right.
Now, I don't want to understate the fact that they just clone NFL receivers, and now Marvin Harrison Jr. is arguably the best wide receiver in college football, right? Yeah. But him and then kind of a little drop off. You don't have 3 top 10 picks on that roster anymore, right? On the flip side of it, on the Michigan side, would you say I'm wrong if I said the secondary is better this year? I know we've lost Dax Hill for Michigan on that side of the ball, but with what Jamon Green's been able to do, DJ Turner in coverage, obviously Mike Sainer still the rise of him on the defensive side of the ball. And then Will Johnson has looked, we kept telling everybody, Will Johnson's not playing a ton, not because he's not good, just because of what the other DBs are doing, right? And now when, with Green was hurt, we saw more. So long question, but do you feel like on paper or I'm even way off here, as well as Ohio State passed the ball last year, it seems potentially likely that there's a drop-off at wide receiver for Ohio State and a rise in secondary for Michigan. Is there a positivity there or a gain for Michigan in terms of this game? Kind of feels like a sequel from last year, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, so could Michigan's defense potentially slow down the passing game a little bit, or are we just banking on CJ Stroud's going to throw for 350 yards in this game?
I mean, the funny thing is that, last year I felt like Michigan kind of controlled CJ Stroud a little bit, and he threw for 300 and something yards, but
it was almost 400.
Almost 400 yards. And it didn't really seem that bad. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, all right, you let him throw for whatever, how many yards, but if you can control the line of scrimmage and make plays when you need to, that's what counts. And I'm kind of banking on that being the same case, but you're right. I mean, there's a lot missing from last year's team on offense, but again, they're still going to be very good. And I'm banking on the part that, CJ Stroud is just going to get his. I mean, that's just what's going to happen, but you can't let him beat you. The long ball still kind of worries me a little bit, from the Michigan State game. And, they've been susceptible of giving up some long passes, and to give credit to the defensive backs in good coverage too. So, just good players make plays, and no matter how good the coverage is, they're just going to make the plays. But, it is worrisome that, they're going to be facing again, probably the best receivers that they've faced all year. And that's no that's probably Michigan State's probably number 2 in that regard. Well, no, I'd probably say Maryland's number 2 in that regard. But yeah, I mean, I do think Michigan's defensive backs are better than last year. But what scares me the most is that they've been susceptible of giving up some big plays. It's kind of a mixed bag with that group. You get some really good plays, and then at the same time, you get some big plays on them. And fortunately, it hasn't really bitten them yet. But Saturday is an opportunity where, they might not have, their deep stable of running backs healthy and out there. So they might want to throw the ball a little more. And can, the guys out there make the plays needed to A, keep the ball in front of you, and B, prevent some really, I guess, momentum crushing plays, that we saw a couple of times against Illinois, where they had some really big time completions to extend drives. So it's almost, I almost consider it a wash. The Ohio State is really good, and Michigan's defensive backs are also really good, and their safeties are included in that argument too. I think it just equalizes each other out. I think that it's just going to come down to guys making plays. I don't think you're going to see any, blown coverages or, boneheaded mistakes for Michigan's defense this year, because they just haven't shown any all year. They're really technically sound, fundamentally sound. And I don't expect that to change tomorrow at all. But, yeah, I mean, really, I'm kind of talking myself into this being a great equalizer of Michigan and Ohio State's, wide receiver defensive back group going against each other, kind of evening it out. So, I mean, this is what this game is all about, big time players making big time plays. And, whoever's big time players make the most plays, they end up winning the game. It seems elementary in that thinking, but, that's what it comes down to in these kind of rivalry games.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, that's why you can show highlights from games from 30 years ago and still know exactly what happened in that moment, right? You become legendary in this one. I'm a little bit more, I guess, optimistic in terms of, I do think the secondary is taking a big step. I do like Jesse Minter in there in this game because he has more of a defensive background, also Klingscale in year 2.
Yeah.
I just think we might see something a little extra there, but I also felt really, really confident about our secondary in 2018. So, I mean, that was crossing routes and Brandon Watson getting eaten alive, but still. So,
yeah.
The last Michigan defense piece I want to kind of touch on, and you brought it up a minute ago. We're talking a lot about Michigan's injuries, but Ohio State's stable of running backs, like you said, their top 2 running backs dealing with injuries as well. Yep. I don't know how much you know about their status going into it, but again, from a matchup standpoint, we saw against Northwestern, I know the weather was terrible. I know. But when Ohio State had to run the ball, they couldn't. And when you knew Northwestern was going to run the ball, they could. Right? So that's still kind of in the back of my mind. So I guess Ohio State with their injury situation, or even without their running backs versus Michigan's run defense, how do you think that's looking the day before the game here?
Yeah, I've been hearing all week that Henderson's in doubt to play. Again, I'm not connected to Ohio State's program. Right. I just get this information secondhand. So, it would be a big blow for them for Henderson to be out.
Just real quick for those that don't know, Trevion Henderson was limited last week, and Mayan Williams was out because he was carted out the week before from a leg injury. So that's what we're talking about.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't know if Mayan Williams is going to play either. So, it's. Again, it might be one of those situations kind of like what Michigan's dealing with, where both guys may play but be limited, or one guy's probably leaning more out toward than the other. I don't know for sure, but I've been told by people that Henderson might not play. So I guess that's a win for Michigan in that regard, I guess. But yeah, I mean, the running game is going to be really interesting. I'm kind of curious to see what Dallin Hayden can do. Because he's the healthiest back, so I'm sure he's probably going to get the most snaps, tomorrow. So Michigan has been so good against the run that, I really don't have any doubts that they're going to continue, shutting down the run game. Again, this is probably, I can't really think of a better running back Michigan has played against all year other than Chase Brown, of course. But
dinged up as well, but yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I think Michigan could learn a lot from what they did last week in how Chase Brown really carved them up essentially for the better portion of the game. So I think that's kind of going to be a point of emphasis this week. I don't know for sure, but again, if you pride yourself on 75 yards rushing a game or rushing yards against the game, and you got a guy that goes for $150 on you. Granted that he's very, very good. You're going to try to diagnose what went wrong and what happened and try to fix that. So that's obviously going to be a point of addressing this week. So, there's a big opportunity here for Michigan to kind of not necessarily focus on one part of Ohio State's offense, because you just can't do that. They're that prolific and that good that, you can't just say, oh, forget about the run game, we'll just shut down the pass. But, if you've got something going for you where, you can kind of shut down the running game of Ohio State, I mean, it gives you an opportunity to kind of focus on, shutting down the biggest part of their offense, which is the passing game. So, again, a lot of this kind of depends on whether Mike Morris can play too, because if Mike can play, I think Michigan has a much better chance of being more disruptive and controlling the line of scrimmage. And ultimately, I think that's going to be the key to the game here. Both sides of the ball is controlling the line of scrimmage. And I think whoever does that, the best is gonna come away victorious in this game.
Well, and I think you're right too. I don't think you as a defense can make the decision that you're not going to worry about the run game or whatever. But if you as a defense can force the other team to make that decision, right? Yeah. I think the biggest play, arguably, of the game last year was Josh Ross, third down, start of the second half, tackle for loss. Ohio State came out looking to establish the run. They ran 3 straight run plays and had to punt. And that tackle for loss was just a killer play by Ross, right? Michigan gets the ball. What do? 3 straight run plays, find the end zone, right? That was the biggest moment of the game. And from then on, Ohio State gave up on the run game. They really did. And Michigan didn't throw a pass and just ran it down their throats, right? So I think you're looking for a similar moment to do that, to try and make them one-dimensional by their choice. And then Jesse, just came in. I think Roman is going to have a big game similar to Olave a few years ago. Oh, I remember that. Came out of nowhere, right? So, but on that note, going to the offensive side of the ball, right? I think we talked about Corum, and there's only so much we can guess there, right? Mm-hmm. And similar situation with Edwards. I do think Edwards is arguably the best receiver on Michigan's team, just in terms of what he can do in matchups with linebackers, what he can do with catches in traffic. And we've seen him make some tough catches in the end zone, right? But everybody else, apart from the running backs, right? Is there a receiver that needs to have a big game? I know Cornelius Johnson last year had the catch. Roman had a couple plays, but overall the receivers didn't do a ton. They only threw 19 passes, right? But does Michigan need its own Chris Olave and Roman Wilson this year? Something like that. And if that happens, who's that guy?
I mean, we've been talking about this all year, right? I mean, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? I mean, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to say. It's really tough to predict. If it sounds so cliche and so repetitive, but if any week is going to happen, it's got to be this week. You could see a Ronnie Bell getting that type of game. You could make an argument for Cornelius. Heck, you can even make an argument for Luke Schoonmaker having a big game too. So Michigan has options, but they need to utilize these options. They need to, get these guys into position to make plays. And the part of that is play calling, and part of that is JJ, and part of that is the offensive line giving JJ time to get the ball out there. And the wide receivers have to do JJ a favor and catch balls too. So it's kind of a conglomerate of things that need to happen in order to in order to get this done. And, going back to your Josh Ross point, he had the game of his life last year. So these guys got to have the game of their lives tomorrow on offense, because nothing is really giving me confidence about this passing game and JJ's arm. If they need to do that to win, I mean, it's really tough to talk about the passing game right now, because they just aren't showing anything that, that can consider it dangerous. It's really tough. But ultimately I'd love to see like a Ronnie have a big game, or, Andrew Anthony, someone make a play. I mean, we saw it last week where there were plays available against Illinois, but they just weren't converted. Whether it was, Colson Loveland wide open in the end zone, Colson Loveland just overthrown, Andrew Anthony dropping the ball in the end zone in fourth down. The plays are there. They just need to be executed, and they're consistently not executing when it matters. So that kind of gives me pause of saying, hey, who can have a big game on offense? Because you got to prove it. We talk about it all week. We've talked about it all year, but since the beginning of the year, we've been saying, oh, this might be Michigan's best passing team ever. And they could be, but they just haven't been executing. And granted, Corum has done what he's done, and he's one of the biggest reasons why they're here right now. But these guys just got to get it done. Just plain and simple, you got to make plays. And I trust the coaches are going to put the guys into position to make plays. It's just going to come down to the players. And man, we'll see if it happens.
Yeah, I think I could hit the play button and then just let it come out, my spiel about Andrew Anthony, because I've said it so many times, right?
Yeah.
And it's not an instance of, I think maybe early on in the year, we were like, hey, why aren't they really utilizing him, right? We've seen his snaps go up. We've seen his targets go up. I mean, they're not huge, but Ronnie's dominating the targets. But Andrew's getting same or more targets than Cornelius, Roman. He's just not catching the ball. Now, some of that's been JJ, right? I think that deep ball in the end zone that you're talking about, that play has stuck out to me so much because JJ thought he had a free play. And I think we've kind of discussed, like, is he being restricted a little bit? Is he being held back a little bit? Is the offense, are we plugging JJ into the Cade role instead of plugging JJ into this new offense for him, right? That was the answer for me, because he felt like he could just be himself, and he delivered that throw 45 yards into the wind right into Andrew's hands, and he couldn't pull it in. He's in double coverage. Maybe he's tripped out about getting hit. I don't know. But they're throwing the ball to him, right? So he's just got to make the catch. That's where I kind of go back to what you hinted at. I do think Luke Schoonmaker is going to have a big game. And I do like that Colson Loveland got some extra run, because I think Michigan's game plan, at least in the passing game, I think we're going to see screens. That wasn't an accident that those were thrown into the plan last week, right? But I think about, again, their linebackers, especially, Eichenberg, bless him, playing it with two broken hands, right? But for sure. But without that, I still think Schoonmaker and Loveland could be a real threat there. But I guess that comes into, you talked on that a little bit, but the big umbrella, whether Corum can't go or does go and is limited, or Edwards, whatever, the running game's not working. And Harbaugh says, all right, JJ, win or lose, it's up to you. What do you think? If Michigan gives the keys to JJ and they realize the running game is just not going to get it done for whatever reason, can JJ McCarthy open it up and win this football game for Michigan?
Yes, because I think he's mentally built that way.
Great point.
I think the best part about JJ is that he doesn't panic. And Harbaugh said this multiple times. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't panic. When the moment gets big, he doesn't wet his pants and freak out. He's just JJ. And I think that's going to be the biggest equalizer, all things considered, when things aren't going well. JJ is going to be JJ. And I think that's the biggest part. You want a guy who isn't going to try and force it when it counts. I mean, yes, he's going to try to make plays, but the smart play. And that's what he's done all year. I mean, he's had like 4 interceptions, maybe less than that.
Two
interceptions.
It's 14-2.
There you go, right there. It's and one of them was kind of a freaky one. So
yeah,
I mean, it's half. I think the biggest equalizer is, hey, JJ, go out and do it. He'll go out and do it, but the other guy's going to have to do the other half. You can only do so much as a quarterback, but he's got the chops to do it. I have no doubts in my mind about JJ being out there and doing his thing. It's just the offense just needs to make plays. And I think the mental makeup of JJ is probably one of his best attributes. And outside, obviously, arm talent, you got to have that to be a good quarterback. Legs, awesome. He can stretch plays, he can pick up clutch first downs, but a lot of the game is mental. And all the good quarterbacks, you mentioned, like, you can mention any of great quarterbacks that have come and gone throughout the history of football. A lot of it, 95% of it, is mental and being calm and collected with when the going gets tough. And I think JJ's got that. And, if it comes down to, having to rely on him, I think, he's going to do his part. I don't think you're going to have any worries about him going out there and not doing his part. It's just, the rest of the offense has to go up to his level, or at least do their part, do their 1/11th is what they like to say down in Ann Arbor. So, I have no doubts.
I think it's really important that you brought that up, because during the quarterback battle, we'll call it, one of the biggest things we kept hearing was, this is the best QB room Michigan's had, and this is a great problem to have, right? Mm-hmm. Some other people were trying to argue, if you have 2, you don't have 1, which is dumb. Michigan won a Big Ten championship the previous year with the 2 QBs. So ignore that for a minute. And Cade McNamara is in this conversation as well. I think in the past, Harbaugh's had some talented QBs, right? Mm-hmm. But the headspace of Cade and JJ, and I'll throw Davis Warren to there too because of his life's journey, right? That quarterback room is about winning, and just they're there. You're right. They're there headspace wise. And I do think there's something to the monkey on your back of winning last year. You don't have to convince yourselves you can beat Ohio State. You know you can, because you did it now, right? We've seen this with other programs. Clemson was the one we talked about a lot, where they became a verb. You Clemsoned. It meant you choked, right? Yeah. So, and it was like, once they convinced themselves and actually won, the floodgates opened. So I think that is a huge part of it. But I agree with you 100%. I think JJ has been, and I don't like using the word limited, but just he's been asked to run the offense in a way where we don't want you to turn the ball over. Mm-hmm. And that means less risks. And you brought up the Loveland play open in the end zone. And it reminded me so much of JJ's touchdown pass to Andrew Anthony against Michigan State last season. A lot of us were debating on Twitter. Cade would have thrown the pass on the flat, right? There was, I think it was Schoonmaker was in the flat open, and he saw Anthony and he took the shot to the end zone. We're like, oh, Cade would have taken the check down. Mm-hmm. And I think this epiphany kind of hit me where JJ was allowed to throw that pass, right? Yeah. To Andrew last year. Yeah. And now we've seen JJ's been coached like Cade was last year. So he saw Gash. Gash was his first read, and he was open. So that's where he threw it. Didn't even see Loveland wide open, because that's what box they've put JJ into this year. Right or wrong, the biggest concern we had all year was making those mistakes, throwing interceptions. And you're right. He's done a better job, arguably, not arguably, but statistically, than Cade did in terms of throwing interceptions, right? So I think if that moment comes where it's like, hey, let your instinct take over. I'm going to let you run more than you have. I'm going to let you take some of these shots. If the receivers come through for him, I absolutely think JJ can do it. They haven't asked him to do that because that's just not how they've been winning football games. Right. We can complain about the passing game. They're 11-0. This is the best stretch run Michigan's had since like fielding Yost. Okay. Whatever they're doing is working. We're not in a good place to criticize, right? So
no,
where it is, right?
No, so, not at all. No, they're 11-0. I mean, they're 11-0. You can't ask for more than that. I mean, and this is not like hey, is JJ, is this who he's going to be for the rest of his career? No, obviously not. But, there's plenty of and I hate to use the term they use, but there's plenty of meat on the bone that they've left that could totally change the narrative that we're talking about right now. But and I've seen comments here from our YouTube viewers that that saying that JJ's just been scratching the surface, and 100% correct, and I totally agree. And again, he's done enough to get this team to 11-0. He just might have to do a little bit more tomorrow to get the team to 12-0, and that's okay. I mean, that's fine. I mean, if you want a guy who goes above and beyond in a big rivalry game like this. This is where legends are made, and a big game tomorrow can cement himself in that type of legendary status where people don't forget those types of performances, and they don't forget the season. And I'm not saying that this is a forgetful season if they lose to Ohio State, because they still could very well end up in the playoff. But yeah, there's just a little more opportunity that has been out there this year that I think that they could show tomorrow. And if that happens, great. If it doesn't happen and they still win, even better.
This happens a lot where I get accused of being like too much of a JJ defender, right? But I think it's worth remembering he wasn't throwing until the start of fall camp.
Yeah,
right.
True.
He missed an entire offseason going through shoulder rehab on his throwing arm, right? So when you consider what he did coming out in the Hawaii game and winning this job, and then obviously Cade, unfortunately, having the injury, but like there's a good chance that next year we see a huge step from JJ. I think you're right. I think they asked him to do something this year, not far off different from Cade. I'm not shocked that this is the identity, but I'm not ready to say this is JJ ceiling by any length, and I would not be shocked if he goes out and has an awesome game here. So that's going to lead me to the next part. So we obviously already posted the article today with our score predictions from the Amazing Blue review staff over at michigan.rivals.com. But at the beginning of the year, Michigan State's favorite Michigan Twitter account, Scott Bell, reached out to us and had us all provide our season prediction for the year. And I'm willing to admit that I, at the beginning of the year, said 11-1 and had Michigan losing this game 30-27. But our man here, Josh Henschke, at the very start of the year, had Michigan 12-0 winning this game. So
that's right.
Spoiler alert, I have changed my mind. And I am I've been on the fence. I've been calling it a 3-point game all year. And a lot of that was me giving Ohio State the advantage because it's in Columbus. And I wanted to see how the teams played. And I thought there was some shuffle early on week to week. Like we talked about, I know Ohio State was going to improve their offensive line, try and run the ball more, defense, blah, blah, blah. Michigan, were they going to repeat the identity with the pass game, get better? All these things we've talked about, right? So I'm willing now because I'm confident in the health of the roster and some other things. I'm switching. I'm staying 30-27, but I'm switching to Michigan. So I'm going to ask you, go ahead and say your prediction. And then I guess why you were so confident at the start of the year and why you're not changing your mind today. You got Michigan winning tomorrow.
Yeah. I don't know why I was so confident heading into this year. I just think
you're a contrarian.
Yeah.
You're trying to please all us other writers are trying to be responsible and say 11-1, and you're like, no, 12-0. And dude, you look good, man.
Yeah, sometimes I pull it out of my rear end when I need to. But I just felt that what Michigan returned and what Michigan had. I think, and their schedule had a lot to do with it too. I just really liked what they could be, and obviously I think they've gone above and beyond my expectations, defense especially.
Great point.
And I just think they've gotten over that mental hump of Ohio State, and going on the road and performing in big games. I think they're gonna really thrive in that atmosphere in Columbus. I mean, they've really embraced. You saw it last year against Nebraska, and they haven't gone down there since this kind of new mentality is shown up, where they're really embracing the booze, they're embracing the other traditions of other programs. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they respond, and I have no doubts that they will respond. But I'm just a believer, man. I'm just a believer. I think. I was going into this year thinking that JJ McCarthy was going to take over at some point. in the year. I didn't think it was going to be as early as it was, but honestly, looking back, it's probably the best thing that they did was make the switch. So I had Michigan. I think I can't even remember what my prediction was from today. I think it was 30-27 or 31-28. It was one of those. I think it was.
I'll have to dig it up. It was some. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 31-28. But either way, I'm with you. It's a 3-point game.
Is
I think
30 Michigan, the number?
Yeah, I think 30's got to be the magic number. Both sides. I think. I think both defenses are good enough to kind of stop each other, but I just think Michigan is just to quote what the kids say. Michigan's just built different. Michigan's got that dog in them.
Oh, we're too old for that, Josh.
Yeah. They're just built different this year,
we can't
and I think they've got what it takes to kind of really rewrite the narrative of this whole thing. And if the Michigan does win, I'm looking forward to the fan base, the Ohio State fan base calling Ryan Day John Cooper for the next.
They've already started to.
Yeah.
I saw a few with the whole switching up that senior tradition this week.
Yeah.
I saw a few fans saying like this reeks of desperation. Right?
Yeah.
This is Cooper-esque. I'm like, oh man. Because people have said if he loses this game, Day's gonna get fired. I'm like, I don't think so. Man, that fan base, they're gonna be calling for him. They're already like on edge. You can tell there's some anxiety in them. I think that's such a good point. And it's something D. Brown pointed out as well. The culture. I think that's such a good point. Yeah. The road game and really taking in that environment and not being afraid of it. And I mean, we've seen it at home a ton, obviously, but jump around at Wisconsin, thunderstruck at Nebraska. Like we've seen this team do that and really feed in those moments. So that's a great point. And like you said, narrative busting, right? Last year, how many boxes? Can't win on the road, can't beat as an underdog, can't, all these things, check, right? So we talked about a lot, the defense, the offense, some of the injuries, and then, we've obviously given our predictions, but button it up, not necessarily schematically, and I'll do mine first so you kind of go where I'm going here. Michigan wins if, right? What's going to be the thing that happens where you think, okay, Michigan won because, and in my opinion, I think Michigan wins if they're leading at halftime. I think last year, going into the locker room, just the mode that they had at that point, having the 1-point lead. And then just what we've seen this year from this team where I don't want to call it slow starts because a lot of it's been some fluky stuff hasn't gone their way, but just we've seen it. They haven't come out and led any team 35-0 or anything in the first half, right?
Right.
They've kind of felt out the other team, gotten comfortable, figured out what they want to do. And then in the second half, they make adjustments and defensively shut down an offense, control the game to get the win. So that's what I'm going to go with. I think if Michigan wins or if Michigan's leading at halftime, I think they win the game because I think Ohio State's going to be sitting in that locker room. Oh my God, is this happening again? The culture and the confidence of Michigan, and then the adjustments from the coaching staff. So that's what I'm going to say. I say Michigan wins if they're leading at halftime.
Mm-hmm. I would say Michigan wins if they control the line of scrimmages, both offense and defense. If Michigan is creating some massive holes for whoever the running back is going to be, that's a big part of what has made Michigan so good this year. Is controlling the line of scrimmage, controlling the time of possession. And for a team like Ohio State who likes to go really, really quick in terms of the offense, limiting their time on the field and the defense's time on the field too is going to be crucial. So, and then on the opposite end in defense, if Michigan can control the line of scrimmage and make things really difficult for Stroud, it could be an interesting day. You can't let him have time to operate back there because he's going to pick you apart. I mean, he's a Heisman, front runner for a reason. He's good. Ohio State is good. I mean, I'm not saying anything newsworthy here. They're a good team. And if you can control the basics, you're likely going to win the game. I mean, football is way more complicated than that, but when you break it down into that kind of specifics, if you just control the controllables and own the trenches, your chances of winning go up exponentially higher. And I think Michigan has the stuff on both sides of the ball to kind of control that. And not to mention, and you can make the same argument for Michigan too, who is going to be their running back. That kind of limits things as well. So I think there's an opportunity for both, the offensive line and defensive line to kind of really make a statement in this game. And you don't have to have 1 million tackles for loss or 1 million sacks, but if you get pressure and if you get quarterback hits and you get, a couple tackles for loss or just meet guys at the line of scrimmage, I think Michigan's chances of winning are going to go up a lot more than, the alternative for sure.
Yeah, if they get into anything, I don't want to say a shootout, but anything where they're trying to match Ohio State and then they don't have control. Right. It's just, because you do what you just said, and that Cade McNamara interception doesn't mean as much, right?
Right.
I think every year before under Jim Harbaugh, it's been like, we need the ball to bounce our way, make no mistakes, right? The Wilton Spate interception in the red zone play in 2016 cost them, and we could go on and on, but no, I think you're 100% right. So, well, we've covered a lot here, but we're going to continue to cover this, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. So again, make sure you're following us online at Trevor McCue, at Josh Henschke, and make sure you're at michigan.rivals.com. And if you're not subscribed, now's the time, because Josh's intel has been flooding out like crazy. He has been money all week. And right now, if you sign up, again, $22 for the first year, promo code RIVALS22. Just go to michigan.rivals.com, hit sign up. Again, otherwise, if you follow any of our social media accounts, we've got the link posted. You can click it, puts the promo in right away. So we're going to be doing this all night and then starting bright and early tomorrow, all through game time and then all through the night tomorrow. So thank you guys for joining us today. Keep in touch through tonight, through game day tomorrow. And then obviously we'll see you tomorrow. Michigan, Ohio State, everything on the line. We'll see what happens. Thank you.